It says it's now streaming live on Facebook.
Whoa.
All right.
Did it. You did it.
Our tens of fans are listening in.
If anyone wants to share it. Oh,
Yeah.
it's real.
The
Yeah, I'll share it.
on Facebook, if you're following our band page, otherwise we're going to reshare it here in a second.
How do I share it?
Go to our face.
It'll be on our band page, but either way, I am going to let Meredith do that while
I'm on it.
Mare, why don't you start the introductions and I'll start the editing of the Facebook post.
Perfect.
All right.
Switch seats. Well, hello everybody. Hello Facebook land. Today we have an awesome panel assembled. We're going to talk about international touring. We've got people from UK, Scotland, Norway, and a couple artists on here, promoters, the whole thing. So we're going to talk about international touring, both from our lovely favorite friends and bands in Europe coming to the States, and certainly the question Adrian and I want answered is that we want to know when we can go back to Europe and start touring again. That was really the motivation behind putting this panel together. Tell us we can go. So we're going to get started with some introductions. Emily, do you want to kick it off?
All right, I think I've just successfully shared that on our page.
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
you
you
don't
got
have
it.
to go
Everybody's
yet. Oh, hi,
sharing. Hey,
Graham.
Graham, how's everybody doing?
So yeah, we're in a band called the Jellymans daughter. I'm Emily. This is Graham, and we're based in Edinburgh. And we were on tour in Australia when this all happened. It was our first international tour as the four-piece. So we'd spent lots of money on plane tickets to get our double bassist and our banjo player over. And we'd done our first festival, Port Fairy Folk Festival, and then we were on to Blue Mountains, and on the day we woke up to play that, they cancelled the festival. And then that was the snowball. Everything started cancelling. We got a call from government, like Creative Scotland, saying basically, come home now. Because it was that kind of like, well, some of the things have started cancelling, but the guys have just flown out, you know, first time in Australia, they've been here for a few days. Is it worth coming? Like, do we go immediately home, or, you know, do we, I mean, this is a very long-winded introduction. We came immediately home and here we are in Aberdeen right now, and that's us.
Great.
How about David? You want to go next?
Hi, I'm David Gray, the David Gray. There's another chap who goes by the name, who's just a bit singing, but he's just a young kid. I'm sort of semi-retired IT chap and spend a lot more of my time doing music now. I'm playing three bands mainly, a bluegrass band, a sort of 1960s Who type band, and a pagan folk group. Well, the past few years I've been doing a lot of promoting gigs. I've got about 4 venues around here, right in the middle of England, and I'm getting contacts around the rest of the country. I had a fantastic year planned just before COVID hit us. I had Josh Hartley and Blake Thomas were coming over. They were due over in days before the lockdown locked down. And I'd got them into a lot of new venues that I hadn't picked up before. I had Michelle Lewis from California was coming over, and had a lot of gigs planned with them, and we had something set up in October. I was hoping to get Adrian+Meredith over as well.
Dates.
Yeah, and then it's all off. My big worry is that a lot of the venues, which were pretty marginal businesses anywhere, aren't going to be able to open. So to fill me time in the lockdown, I've been doing stuff to try and be able to kick off as soon as we can when we gets going again. I'm building a database of all the venues that I know in the UK, and possibly I've been talking to some people I know in Holland, get a venue of them, and I'm going to try and keep that up to date, find out which ones are still going, get a bit of a relationship with some of the contacts there, just to make it a bit easier planning. It's been really depressing. I've been doing a lot of recording. I know more about Logic than I ever wanted to.
Yeah.
But me pagan folk group, Green Fortune, we've got #1 in the International Pagan Folk with one of our recordings. Yeah, it's called Unbroken Circle, and it's Green Fortune.
So you have had a productive quarantine.
It's very hard doing recording remotely and getting it all going. And as I said, I know more about Logic than I ever wanted to know about it. But yeah.
Well, the interesting thing about the venue database at this particular time is you're probably also checking in and to see just generally who's going to make it through. You know.
Yeah. That's very true.
And that's true. I mean, that's true in the States right now too. We're watching, you know, to see what venues are going to be able to stay open and which are closing. And there was some stimulus money here in the US that went out to a lot of businesses, and a lot of venues were able to get some of that money. So we're hoping it's enough, but we just don't know the future of all this.
It's very depressing because I think my view was that it had been a lot of them have been closing anyway over a few years, but it was perking up a bit in certain areas. I'm from the northeast of England, and that was starting to perk up again around about sort of Sunderland, Newcastle, get a few more new venues. And will that have all gone? Who knows?
2019.
Yeah.
How about the King of Americana Fest, Rune Letrud?
And might I say thank you for joining us on Taco Friday.
Well, we still have an hour until it's done, so that's why I've been given leave. No, I'm here basically because I let people crash on my couch or in my spare bedroom while touring Norway. I've also been known to book a few tours from time to time. And well,
I mean, you co-run a house concert, an amazing house concert series there too. So
yeah, we've had a house concert series running in Norway in Bergen for it's almost 10 years now that has been going, and we've been doing more and more tours for other people, like setting up. We know 5, 6, 7 other house concerts spread over Norway, so we can set up like a trip around the country to those and then get in some venues and stuff, so we usually can set up an okay tour for people, but currently it's kind of stopped.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's nothing is happening at the moment, of course, but we are lucky enough to have shut down early, so we are actually reopening these days. We are hosting our first show in 2 weeks, and I recently booked a 7-gig tour for a friend of mine around Norway this summer. He's going to do the Corona tour, just bringing his car and a tent and his PA system, and he's going to play people's gardens. Wow. So we'll see how that pans out.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you. All right, last but very much not the least. Don, do you want to
introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey, I'm Don Gallardo. I live in Nashville, been here, it'll be 14 years in January. I've been doing about 150 shows a year for the last 20 years. And I don't want to say COVID has been a blessing in disguise, but it's given me a chance to just relax and not be on the road and be away from my 7-year-old little boy and my wife. I was on tour when the whole thing hit. I did a couple shows in the UK, like about 3 or 4 shows in the UK, and then I jumped over to Germany. And basically every venue we played in Germany closed the day after we played our show. So we got super lucky. And then for this tour, I had actually booked one show in Spain at a venue I'd played before. And I when I, prior to all this, I booked it and decided I was going to have 4 days off after the UK and Germany tour. And my first flight, so all this started happening, and my first flight ended up getting canceled supposedly I got an email from the airlines, and I went to the airport, checked in my bag, checked in my guitar, and prior to running through security I couldn't find the gate I was at. So I went, because you have to drop your guitar off at the different spot. And so I asked the guy there, I'm like, what gate am I at? And he's like, your flight is canceled. I was like, oh, really? He's like, yeah, it was canceled yesterday. And I'm like, well, why did you check in my luggage and my guitar? And he's like, I have no clue. So then I had to go back. I was at the airport for about 2.5 hours trying to get all my stuff back. And then I got on a flight the following day and got to Spain. And I was there for about 2 days. And then they told me that my show would be canceled the day before, which obviously no worries. It's a lot of people had worse situations. And so I ended up doing like a living room show to like 6 people on that night. The promoter, I was staying at his house. And then from Spain, my show was on a Friday. I had a flight on Sunday to fly back to the UK. And I had kind of got weary when my show got canceled. So I bought a flight for Saturday back to the UK. And it was kind of, a lot of things were going on at that point. And we got on our flight and it was super eerie. I was sitting there looking out the windows, beautiful sunset, but like something hit me. And we landed. When we landed, I was with my manager, Martin Furlong. He actually flew to Spain knowing he could possibly get stuck with just to make sure that I made it back to the UK. And we landed, and as we landed, they said there was no more flights coming out of Spain at that time unless you were a Spanish citizen. So we were basically on the last flight. Had we waited for that second day, we would have been stuck over there. I was fine with being stuck in the UK just because I have so many family and friends there. But yeah, then we got home, and I finally made it to the UK, made it home, full flight, got home. I was in my basement where I'm at right now, which is also like recording studio. It's my home studio. And I started about 5 days in, I started feeling this tightness in the chest. I lost my sense of smell and taste. I never got a fever, but I had basically everything else, some things you don't want to talk about, that they were saying that happens with COVID. So I think I had it. I'm pretty sure I had it. I was around people that had it. And then I was down in my basement, my recording studio, but I just didn't have the vibe to record it. And I've been home now for 2.5 months, which is probably the longest I've been home in the last 20 years. And just been enjoying my backyard with my kid. And I pulled open the recording stuff one day because I recorded my last 2 albums here, and I pulled it all out, and I just wasn't feeling it. I have all these new songs that I really love, but just haven't, I don't know. There's something, there's a little, you guys know when you record, you got to have that little kick behind you that's pushing you, and there hasn't been anything to do that yet. So I'm here.
It's a difficult time to feel inspired. Even with all the things to be inspired about, the topics are definitely endless, but there's something lacking in inspiration right now. I think part of it is especially like the artists on this particular panel, we were all pushing pretty hard. We were actively touring. We were actively putting out records. We were actively working to build our team, and so that's a tough that's a tough time for artists that had that going and lose that. Meredith said it yesterday to me, and it kind of resonated with me. Is it harder to know what you're missing out on this year? because you got a chance to meet some incredible people on the road.
Right, right. I was going to say, so I got back, and about a couple days into it, my buddy Joe Andrews, he's in Old Crow Medicine Show. He's played on the last 4 of my albums. He called me and he's just like, "Hey, what's going on? How you doing? You made it home?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Oh, we were supposed to fly out today, and we got pulled." And we just started talking about the music industry. And this is early on. We were talking March 16th, and he basically said to me, I said, hopefully, in July or August, we'll all be able to do that again. He basically said, "No, you won't." He's like, "You're not going to play until 2021 possibly." And I was like, huh. And it kind of hit me right there. And I thought, yeah, you're probably right. Because I really don't want to go out touring right now. I honestly don't, because it's pretty dangerous. My wife had 3 family members that have passed in the last couple of weeks from COVID.
Really?
Yeah, we've her mother's first 2 cousins and their father. And so, it's for me, I'm happy to be home. I'm definitely missing being out, like you said, meeting people and playing music, but it's what can we do? This is the hand we're all dealt, right?
Well, thank you guys so much all. I also want to quickly introduce Ian, who has been co-curating all of these panels with us. So Ian's here today. Ian, do you want to do your introduction?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Ian Thomson, manager with Adrian+Meredith, and also talent buyer for Milo Music Festival here in Appleton, Wisconsin. Thank you all for being here. We're looking forward to diving into the international side of touring post-COVID and seeing what all your experiences are during COVID as well.
Yeah, I kind of want to start with sort of just the logistical side of everything. There's a lot to navigate with that. I think that we can talk each individually. I mean, some people are trying shows, some people are trying small house concerts. Adrian and I are talking about backyard concerts right now too, very like limited capacity, that kind of stuff. But for the artists and the promoters on here that either bring artists in or tour or travel, it's one thing to kind of go to your like parents' neighbor's backyard and play to 10 people. It's a whole nother to get on an international flight and be received and not be able to just drive back home that night and everything. And so it's going to be a long time, I think, just with the dangers of the disease, but then just truly logistically. I mean, I don't think you and I could even fly to Europe right now if we wanted to. Could we?
Well,
is there still a ban?
No, I do think that it's going to take an extra, and this is less of a question than maybe a starter conversation, but I do think it's going to take longer for Emily and Don, for you guys to see each other again, or for the long trips to really to take the journey over the sea or go back to Australia. Those are going to take some time, but I'm also curious because there's also an internal to the European continent. There's also a lot of internal traveling restrictions that are opening up right now. There's a lot of, as David said earlier and Rune said earlier, you guys are talking about local concerts, but to you, a local concert is going to grow into another country a lot faster than we will, because of the just the geographic regions, but and because of that, you guys have more international bureaucracy to deal with. You have, as Don and Daniel and I were talking about earlier too, is you got guys that are leaving their van in Germany mid conversation. You've got people that left just in a completely different country when it all hit. And what does that look like? And I've also heard, we've heard a lot of things. We've heard 14 days of quarantine every time that you change countries, which in Europe could be every 5 hours of driving. How do you guys see it? What have you heard? What is your government telling you too?
Well, I don't mind kicking this one off. Yeah. For me, I'm almost like want to play devil's advocate with you as well, because I almost see it as easier potentially to go over to America, right? You have to remember that even the UK in itself is like England and Scotland have their own rules, you know. We're all in different phases of the lockdown. And each country in Europe is like, you know, from Scandinavia to Spain, you know, every single country is so different. So to plan a European tour, thinking of it like there's not one lump, kind of like, but as opposed to, I mean, I wouldn't. So we just got our visas, American visas. We got them in March or February for a year, and we were supposed to do 3 tours in that time. One in May that didn't happen, and one was supposed to be this autumn, and then one around Folk Alliance, which is obviously cancelled next year. So, but I feel like America, from just what I've seen on the news and stuff, is potentially more open in some states than Scotland. Like you guys have had some examples of like socially distanced gigs occurring in places already, and I think the big difference also is weather, because even if we were going to do outdoor gigs or plan like an outdoor kind of thing, it's Scotland. So you really just can't with a PA, you know, like it's raining today, it's June, it's raining tomorrow. But I think that, so the option to fly is kind of still, as I can see it, open in a lot of countries, but it's just like my friend recently, like a few weeks ago, he went from Edinburgh to Croatia for surgery or something he had to go to Croatia for. You can go to Croatia, but he's going to fly to London, to Frankfurt, you know, the flight's going to be cancelled, or next day you can't find a hotel. So it was like, you know, it took him days to get there, but he got there. And
so
then
it is logistics. I mean, really, truly, logistics becomes a lot of this conversation.
Yeah, and I think the whole, yeah. So right now, if you were to come to Scotland or the UK, you know, it's 14 days of quarantine. But you know, I don't know how they're policing that. They're just trusting people to do it. It's a bad system. It's all.
I think it won't last very long, actually. That I think they should have put it in March. They put it in too late, and there's a lot of resistance against it. It's not going to last. That'll be gone by August, I'm sure.
It's about that, like, you know, when time to tour. But I'm just assuming that those visas we've got are not going to be used, because really it's like until you get a vaccine, you know, even if America starts opening up again by September, it just might be too dangerous to put people at risk asking them out to the gig.
Certainly, America is opening up, but our caseload is also like, our numbers are spiking left and right. I mean, downtown Nashville, Broadway has musicians, they have full bands, it's open, you know.
There's drunks in the street.
But it's supposed to be at limited capacity kind of stuff. But, you know, so we're certainly preparing for the second wave here as well.
It's here. I think it's here already.
I agree. So, you know, again, I mean, these are hard conversations to have, because we can so easily just shrug our shoulders and be like, nobody knows anything. And I mean, at the end of the day, we don't. There's one thing to be able to fly to another country. There's a whole nother conversation of, is that really what you want to do?
Is it worth it? Yeah, is it worth it?
What's the risk?
That's going to be the one of the big questions. Like, is it worth doing? Because you know, you've got to make some money in doing it, and whether there'll be the venues, the good paying venues, and how much you're going to have to spend on flights. I think air flights are probably going to be a lot more expensive, and the logistics are going to be more involved. But be making sure you can do it and actually make it worth your while doing it. And I think that might be some if that's the case.
Let me chime in real quick here, just to give you an idea. Is it worth it? Well, this might help out to tell you whether it's worth it or not. Before, when it was just starting, we were playing a show in Germany, and it's about 100 people, about the same as we had the time before. But the promoter had told me it would probably be 150 to 200. It was a small little venue. And we showed up, and he's like, I don't know if anyone's going to show up. And so that's one thing you got to think about if you're going to be doing these tours. Are people really going to show up? Because we went from the first time we played at this place, we thought it was packed. Well, he told me they could get more people in there. I was like, okay, cool, whatever. I mean, we had a good time when it was packed. But the night we played, it was about the same amount we played the first time. We were satisfied with it. But he was just like, I know tons of people that were planning on coming that just didn't come because of what's going on. So, if we're at where we're at now, who's going to show up? It's basically, you were talking about the quarantine, who's going to do the 2 weeks. Well, that's up to the person, because you could have it and pass it on to someone that you could be asthmatic, so it's up to humans to be human and take care of each other and basically follow the rules. That's kind of.
Yeah, this is just to fall under that too. I mean, I'm not sure what it's like in Norway or the UK, but in Nashville, only half of the people are wearing masks at the grocery store.
Yeah, totally.
It's the same here.
But
Yeah, I would say most people aren't wearing masks in grocery stores.
Nobody wears masks over here at the moment, but at the same time, the infection rate in Norway now is literally close to zero. There are no.
Did you get hit hard
in the hospitals anymore? Well, not really. The government shut down really hard, really fast. So they sent everybody home from school. Everybody who had the opportunity to work from home were told to work from home. So the first 3 weeks, when it actually really started, the entire country completely shut down. Like, I would look outside my window, there would be no people anywhere. What
was the date?
No people.
What was that date?
Oh,
in March?
When could that have been? That was early or mid-March, I think it was.
Okay.
So we were basically completely shut down for 2 months. Like, you could go to the store and buy your food. Everybody took every precaution, washed your hands. You washed your hands when you came to the store. There would be places to wash your hands at the store when you came in and when you left. A lot of people just ordered food to be brought to their houses, and they kept the schools closed until the infection rate was like they have this infection number, which when it's over 1, then you can. I don't know how it works. It was if it's over 1, you infect one person. Well, I don't remember exactly how that works, but the infection rate went down quite quickly through May, and then the schools reopened, and the infection rate hasn't really increased, even with the schools open.
Wow.
So I think the infection rate, that number they used, the infection rate was at 1.7 or 2 or close to 2 or something. And now it's at 0.2 or 0.3 or something like that. So
Norway is kind of
coming back.
I don't want to say normal, but I mean, are you pretty much fully reopened?
Well, society is kind of back to normal. I've been back working at least part-time back at the office for a month or something. Schools have been open. People are behaving a lot more like they used to. There's a lot of people not taking as much care as they used to do. We had big demonstrations after the George Floyd thing, and people showed up for that. I wasn't too smart, but I can see why they did it. It's just the timing isn't the best. And we have slowly and carefully been reopening. People are still careful. People are still washing their hands at the store. But as long as the infection rate is as low as it is, I think we stopped at something north of 300 deaths in Norway, which is quite low compared to Sweden, who has thousands.
Sure does.
Wow.
Yeah.
There are lots.
And then at the moment, there are hardly any people in the hospital with COVID. And yeah, so we're slowly reopening, but they are keeping the borders closed.
Gotcha.
Right.
So today they opened the border to Denmark and to Finland. So Danish people and Finnish people can come to Norway and vice versa.
But not
We
to
have not to Sweden, no, because they are still hit really hard. And anyone coming from anywhere else will be turned away at the border.
How do they determine that you didn't go from Sweden to Finland to Norway?
Well, they can't really.
Right.
You just have to trust that people aren't stupid.
It's a dodge around the 14 days, because we're not in the UK. You don't imply it to people from Ireland. So anywhere, like if you fly to Dublin first and then fly to England, you don't have to do the 14 days.
You can work.
If you come from the US, if you come from England, anywhere else, you will be put into a hotel and you will be kept there for 2 weeks. But mainly, they turn away people at the border. Say, sorry, but there's nothing for you here now.
Right.
So I had one really big tour happening in March that we had to shut down. I had 2 more tours, one in August, and a couple of more that we were working on, and then we tried to reschedule the one in March to October, when I was going out with Michael McDermott for a couple of weeks. And I don't know if that will be happening. I think probably not, because I can't see they will let Americans in, because you haven't got your shit together, basically. Sorry.
So Emily, you want to come to
It's
America?
true.
We haven't had our shit together since it all started.
It seems like the countries whose governments locked down earlier are in Europe anyway, are going back to a more normal standard of life quicker. And our government, well, the Scottish government right now is trying to like make up for not locking, because we have devolutions, right? They could have locked down before the English government, before the UK. That's something that hasn't been, but because they didn't, and they locked down altogether at the same time, and our figures are terrible. I think now the Scottish government are drawing out phase 1 of the lockdown like more than the English government to kind of try and make up for it. But it also seems to be working. We've had no deaths in Scotland, or I'm not sure what the recent figures were, but we had at least 2 days in a row this week with no deaths, and there's only, I think the ICU is down to like 18 people, or the figures are looking better. We're reassessing next week whether we go into the next phase of lockdown, and the jury's out. But I think England are moving further than Scotland, as far as I can tell, and I'm not sure how the figures are reflecting on that.
The figures are much worse in England. There's still a lot of new cases. I think they're down to about 100 or a couple of hundred deaths a day from where they were, but there's still thousands of new cases every day.
So it seems that maybe quite a lot of people in Scotland are kind of complaining because, some aren't, but because England's going back to work and back to school quicker than Scotland are. And obviously everyone's got cabin fever, but the way that the statistics are kind of reflecting on that seems like it was a good call. Yeah, for touring, I just think that it's too much of a financial risk to plan anything internationally, especially if it involves we've literally wasted £2,000 more on US visas, and the US government don't seem to be allowing any leeway on those dates, and we definitely can't. We haven't recouped that cost to then go, well, we'll just get another US visa for the following year. So I think for us, it's looking like we'll be doing a lot of touring locally when it's finally allowed, and recording in the studio. When I think that shouldn't be too long until somebody can go into a studio again. We'll at least be doing it in Edinburgh, and it might be we've never recorded in, well, we have, but our last album wasn't recorded in Scotland, so it might be good to just get back to the Scottish music community for a while, and then eventually the English music community, and then we'll reassess the situation, I guess.
Do you think we'll get the punters out? That's sort of my worry. When it eventually goes, people will be avoiding going into public places a bit, and we mightn't get there.
Yeah, I think, well, and the other worry is the venues shutting. We just literally today did some work with we've got the Music Venues Trust in the UK and the Save Our Venues campaign. So right now there's a few venues in each city in the UK that are at risk of immediate closure. And like in Edinburgh, at least Henry Cellar Bar and Sneaky Pete's and places that like we got our start, and we played there every week for years when we were just kind of finding our sound. And so if they shut, then there's going to be less places to play. I personally want to believe that there is going to be more of a demand for live music, like more than ever, but with socially distanced gigs, I don't know how it, I know that a lot of people aren't totally into the whole internet gigs, kind of like, it's just not going to cut it. There was a booking agent, Phil Simpson, who works for Strata, who'd released a really good online kind of his musings about this whole thing. And he was saying, like, recently we had Laura Marling do a fantastic concert in Union Chapel, like one of the best venues in the UK. And even as stunning as the venue and the sound and her is, he's just like, there's just that something that's still not there. He found himself just like on his phone on Twitter, and it just like I'm glad to be hearing these things, because I'm not ready to make the internet gigs the new normal, but that's just me.
Rune was touching on a really good topic that maybe we can jump into for a round. Is part of it is trying to find out where society is, and music is not necessarily the entire economy. It's not the only business that runs, and things like, what is the general comfort of the people in your country, in your region, for not just music, but for going to the grocery store, going to work, going to school, because I think that's going to have an impact on whether or not they feel comfortable going to see art. If they are comfortable with going to work, they're probably going to be more comfortable going to a show. Can we say that may or may not be the case? That's a good question all in itself. So how do you see your particular audience dealing with this reopening phase?
Like I said in the opening, I just booked a tour for a friend of mine with, I think it's 17 or 18 gigs in June and July. And those are basically garden parties or backyard parties. A couple of venues have booked them, and surprisingly many of those are already sold out, because people are desperate to go out to see live music. And because we have been lucky and the infection rate is so low, and people are a bit less worried, they are more likely to go out and see music again. So if we will, of course, get an increase in infections over the summer. Like you guys, you have been here during the summer. You know what Norway is like in the summer. Every business shuts down. Yeah, and everybody goes out on vacation. So when we start traveling around the country, infection will increase in the fall. But hopefully they have set up enough testing and tracing so they can actually keep on top of it and keep it down. And of course, everybody expects the infection to increase, but the question is, how will we be able to handle it, or will they have to shut down again? So just at the moment, we're just trying to enjoy the summer as well as we can, and a lot of people are actually behaving quite normally. There are bankruptcies, there are businesses really struggling. The government is doing, well, more than a lot. They have money, so they can throw that into businesses and people struggling, but we still have a way to go, because there are a lot of businesses that's gonna go bankrupt over the next few weeks and months if they don't get more stimulus packages. So, but we're actually quite optimistic at the moment.
Sure. Anybody else in terms of audience and how you
David,
see?
you had a good point about how do we do it. You know, if we can't do summer outdoor gigs, you know, a lot of our audience are older. They're not necessarily like, you know, it's the Americana kind of crowd. Are they going to want to, even if they want to, are they going to feel safe? How do we ensure that?
That's someone had just commented on this thing we're doing, and they said, you know, people have to go to work. Maria Wallace wrote, people have to go to work, but they don't have to go to a gig. And most people who support folk and bluegrass, Americana, are over 60 and therefore a more vulnerable age group, which is what you just said.
Totally.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not going to do any shows this year at all. I've booked something. I've booked a couple things in May of 2021, and even then, I kind of feel like, is it going to happen? Who knows? You know, we don't know what's going to go on. We don't know if there's a new vaccine. It's basically all just up in the air. Rune, you're lucky you guys don't have anything going on. That, you know, you guys have shut down early enough to where you cut it off, and that's a blessing in disguise. We're a mess over here. I mean, and
but they're still quite strict when it comes to the venues that are reopening, because a room that would earlier take 80 people will now take 20.
Oh wow!
Like, yeah. So you have distancing inside the venue. You are sitting at least 1 meter apart. You can sit with your family if you came together, and if not, then you're staying apart. So the venues are keeping that are keeping to the rules, and they are selling tickets for like, you buy a table at a venue, like your family is sitting at that table, the next or that person is sitting at the next table. So they're keeping the distance inside the venues. So the money isn't that good, of course, because of that. A place that could take 100 people could now take 30, 40. So that's something we are working on as well. The thing we're doing in 2 weeks, that's a place that seats 80 or something, and we're selling 20 tickets.
But should we be touring as well? That's another kind of, because right now everything in the calendar for 2020, as far as me and Graham are concerned, is gone. Yeah. I'm not, especially, I mean, it's really hard to tell with Scotland, you know, what if, you know, if places had controls of borders, or they did something and it was eradicated somehow, but that's just not really possible right now with how we're seeing it. But it's like, should we be, I can see why venues are rushing to open their doors, because they're at fear of going bust. It's kind of, it's a shame for them, but it's different for the artists. We can take the break. Well, I mean, again, we can't, because also financially, but is it wise to be trying to schedule in gigs right now? Like, I don't know what the answer is.
There's a cohesive comfort level there, right? You know, everyone has to be comfortable coming back into it. I think we all have to also realize that, you know, and understand the money's not going to be there like it was before. So it's kind of like you come down together in order to come up together when it's all said and done, and just keeping that cohesive mindset there.
Right.
Touring is a great way to spread a virus.
Yeah.
Going from room to room filled with people and then spreading it around the country.
And there's also like if we don't gig at all for longer, then maybe we can go back to gigging sooner than if we try to do gigs that are half-assed in every way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then it all depends on just how it changes from month to month, everything about it. So, I mean, yeah, without a vaccine, I can't see.
How do you guys see, and this goes to everybody just from their own perspective, how do you guys see releasing music that you're not touring on?
Can I jump in here? Because I've noticed a lot of friends have been releasing stuff, and I released a record in February right before I went to Europe. It was 6 months after I released my prior record. It was kind of a sneak record that I just snuck out on everybody, and I toured on it in Europe. Well, when I got back, it wasn't available, and I was like, well, why would I release it? Then I just decided, what are you gonna do? I just released it. I'm not paying for any promo. I'm not doing any of that. It's just a record that's out there that's kind of just floating amongst whoever decides they want to get it. And it's not like people are buying them anymore. It's Spotify has made sure of that, I mean, I went from selling close to 10,000 albums a year. I've 8 albums, and I'd sell about 10,000 a year, either at shows or online. And I went from selling that many to selling 165 because people just get it on Spotify for free. So, releasing a record, I mean, unless you're on a big label and they're paying for promo and all that stuff, cool. But if you're not, and you're like me, I just released an album that no one even knows about. And do I care at this moment? I don't know. I mean, who knows what the hell we're going to be doing? This is just a giant question mark. We've been handed this, and we're going to float through it. And the worst part of it is all these venues that we grew up on and played through, or half of them are closing. The 2 venues that I played at growing up that started Cut My Teeth in are just announced they're both closing in my hometown, and they were their last 2 venues in my hometown. So now there'll be no live music in that town.
What town is that?
In Fairfax, California.
Okay.
So it's a tough thing. But what we can do is just it's just a giant question mark, and that's my personal opinion of it all. But
yeah, I mean, I think that in general we can all agree that 2020 is done, right? There's just no shows. I mean, if somebody is compelled to play, there's a lot of debate. What was that?
Not for Rune.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Norway.
Following the rules.
Let's all move to Norway.
We're all going.
We should have moved last year when we talked about it. We really missed our.
Buy more couches. You need more couches.
We're coming. But I guess it's like there are days where I just think, Meredith, let it go. We just need to sit back here and wait this whole thing out. And don't be impatient. It's just going to take a long time, and it is what it is, whether we release the record or not release the record, or when we can tour, when we can't tour. But then there are other days where I'm like, the planner in me that is so trained as a musician, we are used to planning up to a year in advance. Sitting here thinking, should I be booking for summer of 2021, or is that ridiculous? Yeah, I mean, should I be looking at Europe for 2020?
I want to ask you a question, the planner in you and all that, because I've done all my tours my whole life. I've had booking agents and whatnot, but there's a lot to go on. How much happier are you now that you don't have anything to do in 2020? Because I feel like the stress level of my life has been, there's no stress of anything. It's usually I go on tour, I come home, I have to think about the next run, and then I get back, and then I got to think about the next one, and here I am just thinking about the next, and then the next, and the next, and the next, and now I'm like, oh, I finally get to take a breath.
The hard part, I will say this, the hard part is that the shitty part of touring, the logistics, that's going to get more complicated. So unfortunately, the worst part of touring is going to become more complicated. But but I still miss the reason why.
I miss traveling.
Yeah, I still miss the people, and I still miss the experience, and I still miss playing. But the logistics suck, and they're gonna suck more.
And this is also coming from, I mean, Adrian's been doing, 150 shows for about 10 years.
Same. I mean, we've been in it.
I've only been doing it for 5, so I still have moments of being bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I'm sitting here boo-hooing because I wasn't ready for it to be over, So I do think that there's a spectrum of that health and wellness conversation too, as to when it beats you up for too long, you're just a cog in a wheel and you can't get out. And this is something that has provided a moment of space for a lot of people in the world, in a lot of different industries, not just music. But yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, it's just, am I happier? Yes, in a way. I have way less emails to send, but
I don't look at the phone 24 hours a day anymore. It's like the phone, you're like a slave to the phone and all, before, and your computer every morning, getting up, doing stuff on the computer, then your phone, I feel like, in the live sessions have actually, as much as I hate I hated before doing any live session on Facebook, or even just recording a song and playing it and going, yeah, woo, I hated it. Now I love it because all my friends in the UK and Europe and throughout the world are online, and they're commenting and talking to each other like they're at the bar, hanging out. And it's so fun to see that. Like it's cool to take people out of where we're all at right now and throwing them all online together at a show and be able to talk, back and forth and stuff. And that puts a little happiness, in the live session thing. And it is what it is,
I feel like there's such stress in touring. Obviously, there's always stress in touring, but I'm finding a lot of different kind of stress in this situation. And I find it harder to deal with. The stress of touring, you kind of know what that is and stuff. But I think the whole not having a purpose and like your whole sense of worth for me is on stage, doing that every night. So I find it's a different kind of mental like stress that is harder to deal with. I've totally accept all the circumstances, but I don't feel happier in COVID, but maybe that's because I haven't learned to direct it into some other outlet or project yet. But I'm hoping that when we start recording, when that's able, then our focus is just trying to work on the next album. But I think I'd take the stresses of touring right now if there was a.
Well, usually when we're at home, we're kind of doing whatever, but we always have that thing of like the next tour is at this point, and we're kind of looking forward to that and planning for that and thinking about what's ahead. But at this point, it's like no one knows when that's going to be.
I also
when's
just
the next tour, like no one knows.
I feel lazy. My other friends who are all working from home, or like even compared to Graham, because when we're not on tour, Graham teaches cello and I do corporate events and weddings and things like that, but obviously that's cancelled. So Graham's still teaching and I'm like, what is my life? And you start to actually think, why the hell did I pick musician? What a stupid job. I don't know, you're kind of reevaluating everything. But I think there's a lot of friends of mine who are literally like, I have nothing to do and it's been 3 months.
Yeah, and it's an abyss to stare at, especially after 3 months. And I hate to change gears again, but this
Can I just jump in a bit, Adrian? You said an interesting thing just a few minutes ago. I don't remember who mentioned it, but you talked about releasing or not releasing.
Yeah.
And I'm not a musician, but I listen to a couple of albums.
Just a few.
Every day. So I discussed this with Michael McDermott when the tour crashed, and I've seen a couple of artists, a couple of my friends as well, have pushed back their releases, said, well, we're going to release it later. And then he said, well, at the moment, you guys are my captive audience. You have nothing better to do than stay home and listen to music. So he actually pushed the release forward and put the album out earlier than he planned to. And in my opinion, get as much music out there as you can, because people are actually sitting at home listening at the moment. They're not out at the bar. They're not going out to see friends. They are staying at home, either watching Netflix, or if you give them something better to do, then they will listen to your music.
You're right.
I don't have the answer, but that's just. I enjoy the new records that come out because I have better time or more time to listen to it.
And your thought is that you're just when you listen to a record, and even though we're not touring on that record, all you do is just you're harboring excitement for when you can see them live.
Yeah, of course. And it's kind of, in my opinion, it's marketing.
Yeah,
it's important that we want to keep in people's attention, that people won't forget you.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I've heard a lot of people say that get singles out there. Albums, maybe not, but singles. Get singles out there. Yeah. Give people something to listen to.
I mean, the reason why I released that record is because of what you just said. People are home. People are doing nothing. They have nothing better to do. So it's the first album I've ever released and didn't have any promotion behind it whatsoever in the last 10 years. So it's just something that's sitting out there that I have. And honestly, I don't have the money to pay for promotion for it right now because I'm not touring. So,
and that's a good way into our last comment, because we are at the top of the hour and it goes very fast.
And we can keep going, but we are sensitive to anyone's time if they need to jump off as well. So
I got it, because I've my 7-year-old upstairs biting his teeth.
We'll start closing it down. I appreciate everybody's input today, and what I think we've learned from this, and I've been thinking about all hour, is that there's probably more conversations that need to be had. There's a conversation about the legality of touring and visa processes, and Americana Fest canceling yesterday, and Folk Alliance canceling, and all these international conferences that help grease the wheel on a lot of the business, especially in international touring markets. So, particularly David, we didn't even really get into what we wanted to bring you on for, but I would love to have you back on stuff that's more specific to that.
Keep going. I can do about 10 more minutes, so keep trucking.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
we'll start closing it down anyway.
Yeah, we'll start closing it down. I mean, with some of this, Americana Fest canceling, I think Rune, you posted on Facebook to some of that comments of, you were going to take a break this year anyway. How do you guys, I mean, to me, it's kind of hit and miss of 50-50, right? There's a reason that it's probably a good thing to not have to travel to Nashville or Kansas City and spend a bunch of money. And we don't have the tour income to support that. And the international touring market is slowed down to a place where we don't have to think about it. But at the same time, that is where we get 2021 from. And so we're probably not looking at Americana Fest and Folk Alliance for 2020. We're looking at it for 2021 and 2022. So, how do you guys, what's the question I want to ask? How do you guys help me out?
I don't know.
Okay. Any thoughts? Does anybody have any thoughts?
On a positive. Yeah, let's end on a positive. I'd say that there's definitely some good things brought on by this, and it's just that kind of notion of slowing down, of kind of like, taking stock of what you want to be focusing on next year and in the years to come. Like, we've got the opportunity. We had just endless touring plans, so we've got the opportunity to write and record an album in a manner that is, just gonna probably be the best for us right now. Take our time over it, make sure we're happy with everything. And I think that everyone's realized what's important in life, and hopefully they'll realize they valued live music input.
Yeah, all those things. Yeah, well, we wrote a song that would have never existed if we hadn't had to come home.
That's the thing. Like we released a single, and you think it won't have been written.
I don't think we would have done a thing like that before, where write a song, record it in a living room, and put it out like within a week. That's like usually it's like you do the whole songwriting and the production, and then like there's mixing, and then there's a release. It's kind of refreshing.
And the fact that this is happening all over the world, we're all very connected right now, and we all have to find a way through together, you know. Yeah. And I don't want to sound cheesy, but I'm sounding cheesy, so we'll end on that note. Yeah. We're hopeful and optimistic, and we're trying not to rush into things.
Yeah, no, but we're seeing our friends more often than we did before.
Over like we would be on tour, because we Zoom with them now every Wednesday, and we're saying like, oh God, I really miss you guys, and they're like, you've been hanging out with us way more than if you'd been on tour.
Yeah. David, do you want to jump in on some closing thoughts too? And I know we didn't get everywhere, but
everybody.
Oh yeah, I mean we'll do everyone for closing thoughts for sure. But I know you're doing some great work right now, gathering up visa information, especially things that are changing in the UK, and and I also know that you've got this venue database coming and that kind of stuff. So yeah.
I'm just using the opportunity to try and do things that I would like to have done, like the venue database, and rather than just make stuff up as we go along. So I'm planning for 2021. Got a couple of festivals that I'm trying to pull together, and we just have to monitor the situation and hopefully we'll be in the position to do it. And trying to every tour we do, we sort of seem to have been making up as we go along. If we can get some better ways of doing it, get some better contacts, some better ways of getting through the bureaucracy, get it worked out, hopefully they'll do a better job of it in 2021. And if we hadn't had the lockdown, I wouldn't be in a band a number one in the international pagan folk charts. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Rune, do you want to go? And then if Don hops back on, he can send us off.
Well, the worst part of all this is that we won't get to go to Nashville this fall.
I had a great day party planned for you guys.
I know.
It's gonna be a great.
Yeah, we'll be doing that next year. But the second worst part is all the artists that I had hoped to get here this year won't be here. And all the artists that would have come otherwise, they won't be here. But it seems like most festivals and most venues are basically rescheduling for next year. So it's not like you guys are forgotten or anything. It's just it'll take longer until we get to see you. So the audience is there, but you're not allowed to come. So the thing is, we in Norway, I think we're a couple of months ahead of the US when it comes to when it started and when it started turning out a bit better. The worst part was that you never really shut down. So you'll still be having issues through the fall and through the winter. And I'm just hoping that something will work out so we can get to see you next year, because I know people are hoping for a vaccine, but I don't know if that happens. They can't make enough for anyone anyway, so it'll be like a year until that's viable. So I think the only way to beat this is actually shutting down and keeping away from it until it dies down by itself. So I'm just hoping as many of you as possible can just make music so we have something to listen to.
Well, Adrian and I are working on that for you.
Yeah. I hope so. Oh, we'll be here when the world goes back to normal.
Good.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. All right, Don, your closing thoughts, and then I know you got to hop off.
Closing thoughts. I mean, I have a new album out there that has no promo. Check it out. It's called The Lonesome Wild. It is, you know, I mean, I'm obviously going to keep playing music and stuff, but I am really enjoying hanging with my little 7-year-old dude. And he plays drums with me in my room down here. And we, you know, I mean, that's my live music is now me and my 7-year-old. But, you know, I mean, I think 2020 is basically just a vacation for musicians. And I just feel for all the people, you know, I know like you all had to cancel tours and lose out on you know, what happens there. I mean, you know how it is. I mean, you stay, like I've done a show with David Gray down there and it was amazing. I didn't know what to expect. And I showed up, it was in this beautiful old school and stayed at his house, made us food, we jammed, we had a great time. And so those are the
very, very drunk, I remember.
Nobody leaves Gray house without being
that would
drunk.
have been Travis. I don't get, that's not, maybe about 5 years ago. Yeah. But, I mean, I definitely can drink some beers, but yeah. But yeah, those are the things that we're all going to be missing this year, you know, and I think, you know, like I said, just keep doing what you're doing, because I'm sure all y'all are doing, you know, you're doing what you should be doing. You know, you're making music, you're writing, and that's all we can really do at this moment. And just hope that this comes out sooner than we hoped it would. And we got to also think about all those, you know, there's people not just in the music world, it's the whole world, you know. I mean, it's anyone in any job. There's tons of restaurants closing, there's tons of bars closing, there's businesses going down, there's, you know, there's people are struggling. And you know, if we can help anyone out, that's what we're here to do during this time. Like, we're here to play some music and take people's minds off the situation at hand, you know. And that's one thing. I did a session yesterday, and you know, when I started off, I was just like, I don't really have to tell my friends to be kind, because they all are kind. But, you know, the one thing we're here to do, we're not here to start talking political on a comment, you know, and have this comment thing pile on of people getting angry at each other. We're here to take people's minds off all that and just play music and let people, you know, enjoy what music does for us. You know, music is that it's always been an escape for every human on earth. And without it, it would be a pretty friggin' boring world. So, you know, just keep being you. And I appreciate you guys, Adrian and Meredith and David and Rune. You know, I miss you. I didn't see you. Did I see you last year?
Yeah, we had no Derby.
Rune, did I see you at Americana Fest?
No, we never met up.
Were there? That's right. And I didn't realize they were there at the show at the basement. But and then Ian, man, the Miles of Music is by far, you guys do such an amazing thing in Appleton. It was one of my favorite things in the U.S. to do. Like, as all of my U.S. touring last year, Miles of Music, that show that I did up there was just magnificent. You guys are beautiful people. That's what we're all going to be missing. And, you know, if we can all just keep it positive, that's the best part.
Yeah. Ian, do you want to take us out? Adrian apologizes, but he got called into another meeting.
Yeah, thanks again for everyone for jumping in on this discussion. It's been awesome talking with all of you, seeing some of you that I haven't seen in a little while. You know, David sent us an extraordinary list for visa information. I'll post some of that on this thread for everyone that's watching on Facebook to check it out, and for all of us on this group also to check it out too. But yeah, let's just keep talking. I think the more we can keep these discussions moving forward, and we're all, you know, like I said, we're all in it together. So let's keep trying to find ways to help each other. And like Don said, keep that positivity rolling too. So thank you all.
Yeah, keep doing what you're all doing. You're all great.
Thank you guys so much. To anyone watching, comments, questions, reach out to any of these panelists individually. We've tagged them if you have any specific questions or follow-ups, and stay tuned for more panels coming from Adrian and Meredith. So, there you go.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having it all.
Thank you.